And we're back on the Generations Radio broadcast with Colin Gunn, producer of some of the most controversial films. I think these have got to be the most controversial films ever produced in the 1990s and the 2000s. So here you are at the end of the tour, okay? The bus is coming to an end. You're just about ready to put the final wraps on this project. So what are you doing out here in Denver, Colorado?
We're here to interview Brian Rohrbaugh. Now, he's a wonderful man. We spent the day with him, and we talked about what he believes about public schools.
A little over 6 years ago, we adopted our two precious children in Ukraine, and we have been blessed in an unimaginable way by God. And we made the commitment before we went that we will homeschool these kids, that no matter what we have to do, there is no chance that they will ever set foot into a government school.
Mr. Rohrbaugh has a very good reason for feeling so strongly about the public schools.
I was a single father, divorced, with one son, Daniel, and I was a Christian, a believer, but very weak, lukewarm. My son was in a public school. Quite often, after school, I'd pick up my son, or my coworker would pick up my son, and he'd come over to my shop. Well, let's take a walk up here. When it was time to leave, we closed up the shop, and Dan said, "Hey, I'm kind of hungry." And I said, "Well, call your mom and be sure it's okay and that you're not missing dinner or something, and we can get something to eat." And he said, "Well, that's all right. I'll eat dinner anyway." So we stopped and got something, and we sat in the truck and talked for a while. And then I dropped him off at his mom's house. And when he was getting out, he looked, jumped out of the truck, and he said, "I love you, Dad. I'll see you tomorrow." And I said, "I love you too, Dan. I'll see you tomorrow." And then I backed out of the driveway and I looked up just as he was going in the house, and he stopped with the door open and waved with a big smile. And those were the last words I ever said to my son. On the morning of April 20th, before noon, I received a phone call. And in a panic-stricken voice, Dan's mom said to me, "Ryan, have you heard from Dan? Do you know what's going on?" And I said, "No." And she told me that two gunmen had entered Columbine High School with machine guns and hand grenades, and they were killing kids. And so me and my coworker dropped what we were doing, and we headed towards the school. And we got to where we could look across a park and see the school, and there were two police cars there blocking our way, and we couldn't go any further. And we stood there watching, and a lady burst out her front door, and she was screaming and crying, and she said to the police, "Save that boy. Do something, save that boy." And that's really where I realized how bad things were. We heard they were going to start bringing school buses. And the first bus came, and I watched as the kids got off, and they'd run to their parents, and they'd cry and they'd hug. And all too often I heard this hollow promise, "You'll never set foot in that school again." When the last bus came, it was empty. When the next morning came, we opened the newspaper, and there was a picture of a young man wearing a green shirt and blue jeans, lying dead on the sidewalk. It was my son. That was our only notification. I knew how bad the public schools were, and I knew that because I was in the public schools. And as parents, I think we want to believe that things have gotten better when in fact they have gotten much worse. It was my responsibility to make sure that my son was safe, that he was educated properly. But I failed that. I put him in a pagan school where they teach there is no God, there is no creation, there's evolution based on a cosmic accident, and evolution breaks down to one simple belief, and that is that the strong kill the weak as a form of survival, and that there's nothing wrong with that.
Both of the killers, Klebold and Harris, had received good grades from their Columbine High teachers for their graphically violent writings. They showed their violent videos in the school classroom with approval. One of them wore a t-shirt emblazoned with the words natural selection, the other with the word wrath. Ideas do have consequences.
They had taken evolution much further than most people do, but if you stop and think through it, their logic was correct if evolution is true. And yet it is taught in the school, and I put my son there. Even though I'm a Christian. So when we talk about my son's murder, yes, it's right to condemn these two murderers. It's right to condemn the school system that taught these wicked things. But you must remember, I'm the one who put him there. And I'm the one who's responsible for his death.
Since Dan's death, there have been over 400 school-associated violent deaths all across America. Michael Moore and the liberal media would have you believe the problem is with guns. How many commentators have you heard mention the schools themselves as the key culprit?
There are many ways to destroy a child, and it may have taken a school shooting to wake us up, to see the danger, but that's a very small danger compared to all the other things that go on that can destroy our children.